Not again. What is that? Weird. Ghost, what's going on, man? You hear about old boy Biden, old buddy Biden? I probably shouldn't start that way. This is how things went wrong last time. I'll just say interesting that all is going down. It's interesting, that's all. I love it, I should say. Big fan of Kamala. I think she's going to do phenomenal in the race. I'm rooting for her. What is it that people say? Our hearts and prayers go out to Kamala for her venture as the next Democratic nominee. I will say that. Tackler in chief incoming. Wild turn of events. Good evening, ladies. We'll wait a few minutes. Tonight is hot though. There's a good section in I want to say it's 9. Hold on. Yeah, in 9, where it's just one of these moments where you're reading the Bible and you're like, damn, I did not want to have to deal with that. Don't want to have to deal with trying to figure out what's going on here. One of the fairly rough points. It's the first, in my opinion, like truly, I don't know what the best term would be. It's not the hardest theologically, but not even close. But it's like the first kind of interpersonal issue where you're like, man, I wish we did not have to deal with this. I wish this was not something that we had to deal with. But we do. I recommend they use a bitrate of 680. We are, baby girl. What are you talking about? Oh, we're not. You're right, YouTube. You win this round. There you go. Be happy. Be happy. No. So Adam and Eve will be on Thursday. We're not going to cut off Genesis right in the middle. So I guess for clarity, in case I didn't make that clear, I apologize. What the plan is right now, what's happening is we ran the poll for the next Thursday book because we're getting close to the end of 2 Corinthians. We're going to take a break and read Adam and Eve parallel to Genesis. So Sunday we'll continue Genesis because we still have a bit left. And then on Thursdays, we'll start Adam and Eve. And then when Adam and Eve is done, we're going to go back to the New Testament probably and continue on chronologically. And then I assume that at some point during the Old Testament, we'll probably pop out for a break to go into the Apocrypha and then come back to the chronological order that we're going through. So hopefully that makes sense. And I'm sorry if I did not make that clear. That was the plan though. So that'll be Thursdays after 2 Corinthians. So not this week because we still have a little bit left. I just wanted to get ahead of it so I wasn't scrambling to get things ready and establish notes and all that jazz prior. But that's the plan. I like how you have the live chats. Yeah, I started this, I think, Sunday when you were gone. I thought it was all right because I can make the text decently big on this side. I do need to play with how to get the chat to stand out better, like to make it more defined. So I think what I'm going to do is put black behind it, because I think that'll solve the problem. I just have not got around to doing so yet, but I think that will solve the problem. So that's the plan. That is the plan. I got some interesting stuff to share about the Adam and Eve stuff. I'll drop in the appropriate spot on the Discord in the next few days. Beautiful. And I will make a section for, I really need to do the Bible study section in Discord. I'm sorry I haven't done that. I really, really want to do that so that we can organize stuff like this better. So I will make it a point to get that done tomorrow. So actually, give me 1 second. I will fix and organize, because I'm going to put through like a whole Bible study section in Discord. There kind of is already, but it's going to be its own thing. Scott, good to see you. So I will do that tomorrow, so that is ready. So Ghost, maybe just sit on them until tomorrow evening, and I will have a very clear and organized Bible study archive where we have all the videos, like all the recordings of the live streams, and then sections for like comments or questions or a freaking article if you wanted to write one. But at least so it's all kind of organized. Okay. All right. So we're doing 8 and 9. We're probably going to run through 8 pretty quick. There's nothing super interesting. There's a bit, but nothing crazy. So, well, hold on. Beautiful. TikTok, you should go to YouTube. You're not going to be able to see anything. So leave TikTok. The flood subsides. So we went through the flood. Everybody knows the story of the flood. So even if you were not here, you at least have, I assume, a pretty accurate understanding of what happened during that section. So the flood subsides now. But God remembered Noah and all the beasts and all the livestock that were with him in the ark. God remembered. This is another example of, I feel like it's been the word of the weeks since we started the Old Testament. It's a sort of anthropomorphism where we're applying these human attributes, characteristics, etc. to a non-human being. Did God remember Noah and all the beasts and all the livestock that were with him in the ark? Reason would say no, because that, if literal, conflicts pretty heavily with what we believe about God, with what we know about who God is and what he is. But what's being expressed is just like it's the conveying of, right? It's just he was thinking about. They were a part of the consciousness of God at that moment. Would be like other ways to kind of consider it. So he remembered Noah and the beast and all the livestock that were with him in the ark, and God made a wind blow over the earth, and the water subsided. The fountains of the deep and the windows of the heavens were closed. Remembering the windows. Did we end up reading all of this? Actually, before I get too far, did we read all of this last time? I think we might have run through 8. Focused on Noah and the beast. I think that's another great way to say it. Yeah. Yeah, I actually think that's a really good way to say it. That's a much more, probably more spot on way of saying it. Did we already read 8? No, now I'm like second guessing this. We're going to read it again then. But I think we did, because I'll pull this up for you again. Favored would work too, yeah. This was a photo I had saved. You can find this too in, Logos has it. But we talked about this last week. I believe it was last week. Where you have to understand kind of what is the thought process, perspective, and understanding of the world that not only the author had, but that the readers and the story hearers would have. And this photo is a good depiction of it, because we talked about the firmament, and we talked about the great deep, the fountains from the great deep. This is really good because it gives you a very clear depiction of it. Okay, Lois said, yes, we did. So we're going to run through it again, because it leads into the next part. And honestly, I feel like there was some stuff that we didn't talk about then that I probably skipped over. So we'll run through it again real quick. So ancient Hebrew conception of the universe. This is it. The reason it's important is there are several, but in this context right now, the windows of the heavens were closed. What is being talked about is that upper limit, which many believe to be the firmament, that the windows of the firmament were closed. Why does that make sense? It's because, like we did talk about last week, is like they believe this was kind of, it was a layer that protected them from an ocean, literally. They believe that it was an aquatic ocean, that when it rained, the windows of heaven were open, and therefore the water came down. And that's why, too, like I said, they talked about the fountains from below. So in the perspective of the author and the readers, what was happening to them was that water was not only coming from above, through the firmament, through the windows that were open, the doors to heaven, but also the water was shooting up from out of the ground, out of the oceans, all that. So you have water coming from every possible angle. Frightening, scary. People today have a different conception of what that looks like. But at the time, that was the perspective. It doesn't help us to think about the flood in the perspective of us today. That's a really ignorant, childish way to read a text like this. You have to be in the mindset and looking through or to the perspective of the actual people that this was written to and the person that wrote it. And that would have been their perspective, not what we think today, which is really important. Ghost said, I think the fountains of the deep bursting forth is what caused the rain. What goes up must come down, which is a possible interpretation for sure. For sure. Because that's what's happening actually, right? Like we know that to be the literal truth of how it works, at least from what we're told. But it makes sense. I think it's a pretty well accepted concept. But so then is gravity, and who knows? Gravity's not real. I'm just saying. But yeah, so that's like kind of the reality. What Ghost just said is the fountains of the deep bursting forth is what caused the rain, because that's our understanding of how rain works. So it gets drawn up and then it comes back down. Their perspective was probably different, though. From everything we gather and understand, they believed there was a literal barrier that protected them from a large body of water above them. Most people, not all, but most, don't believe that today because we understand things like what Ghost just said. Gravity is a spook. The fountains of the deep and the windows of the heaven were closed. So now, signifying the water has stopped. This whole process has now come to a screeching halt. The rain from the heavens were restrained, and the waters receded from the earth continually. At the end of 150 days, the water had abated. And in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. And the waters continued to abate until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the first day of the month, the tops of the mountains were seen. We did talk briefly about this, I believe. This is that large mountain range. There is disagreement from everything that I am aware of about this name that is being given to the actual mountain. From what I understand, this was the name of a country that was in the area. I don't remember where, so I'd have to look. But I don't believe this is the name of the mountain. It is the name of the location, the geographical location, not the actual range. Just to be clear. But there are people who argue about it. So if you care, it's something to look into. And the waters continued to abate until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the first day of the month, the tops of the mountains were seen. So now they have visual confirmation of land. At the end of the 40 days, Noah opened the window of the ark that he had made and sent forth a raven. I don't think we've read this actually. Now that we're getting deeper, I think this beginning, they reiterated some stuff. I'm fairly confident we stopped. So I think this is all new. Then he sent forth a dove. So I'm sorry. He sent forth a raven. It went to and fro until the waters were dried up from the earth. Going to and fro, just for the sake of being able to imagine this. The raven was going out. The raven was coming back. The raven was going out. The raven was coming back. He wasn't going out and then wandered around for a very long time and then came back. He was scouting, essentially. So he was out, he was in. He was out, he was in, going different ways each time. Then he sent forth a dove from him, Noah, to see if the waters had subsided from the face of the ground. But the dove found no place to set her foot, and she returned to him to the ark, for the waters were still on the face of the whole earth. So he put out his hand and took her and brought her into the ark with him. He waited another 7 days, And again he sent forth the dove out of the ark. And the dove came back to him in the evening, and behold, in her mouth was a freshly plucked olive leaf. One thing is that where the dove went, he or she, I suppose, to be politically correct, I don't know. But the dove went out, and the dove found something that was not only alive, but that had matured to some degree. That's kind of an insinuation we can make. A freshly plucked olive leaf. Could it just be a mincing of words, and maybe it was a tiny little stem that had just sprouted? Sure. But I think it's also fair to insinuate that there was some degree of maturity to the plant. So the olive leaf branch or leaf that was picked was brought back, signifying to Noah that life was coming back. The life that was coming back that is not responsible to Noah is the life of the plants. The other life we're going to read either in this chapter or next chapter is under Noah's responsibility. The life of humanity is under Noah's responsibility. So he got the olive leaf, he came back. Rodriguez. So Noah knew that the waters had subsided from the earth. Then he waited another 7 days and sent forth the dove. And she did not, it was a she, I'm sorry. They did tell you. So the dove was a she. And she did not return to him anymore. In the 601st year, in the first month, the first day of the month, the waters were dried from off the earth. This is another thing, I guess, just it's not my jam, so I don't have a lot to tell you about it. But if you care about numerology and things like that, when you get into Genesis and you start reading theories about the numbers, it gets pretty wild. So again, if it's something that interests you, then this would be another section that is interesting to read about the numerology about it. I'm not a big fan of it, as I've said before, so it doesn't really interest me. But I've read some pretty wild stuff, because you get a lot of numbers in Genesis. There are a lot of numbers, a lot of dates, a lot of things like that, or time periods, not dates necessarily. Just something that if you're into it, go for it. In the second month, on the 27th day of the month, the earth had dried out. Then God said to Noah, "Go out from the ark, you and your wife, and your sons wives with you. Bring out with you every living thing that is with you of all flesh, birds and animals, and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." Every creeping thing that creeps, that they may swarm on the earth and be fruitful and multiply on the earth. So there it is. His responsibility is not to the plants. They took care of themselves. We know that because of the olive leaf, the signal that it was safe, basically. Now we're getting kind of this understanding that from here, the repopulation of Earth between not just people, but as well as the animals that he had collected, is up to him. He is essentially responsible for it. So he's saying, go out, repopulate, multiply on the earth. So Noah went out, and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives went with him. Every beast, every creeping thing, and every bird, everything that moves on the earth went out by families from the ark. Interesting choice of words. Not necessary, unless it means something. So, something to think about. Go said, I think everything was a metaphor except the actual flood itself, the dove, raven's branch, olive leaf, etc. I'm not entirely sure, but I lean towards it. I don't disagree. So I get just another disclaimer. I've given it a handful of times, but I'm just going to read this the way it is written. So we'll like break off and talk. Like if any of you have like a specific theory about anything, please feel free to throw it out. I thought a lot about like how to go about this, how much to actually input my opinion and where I land with things, or to just kind of sometimes mention it. I decided to just sometimes mention it. Otherwise, I'm just trying to read straight across. So what the book says, what the normal average interpretations are, the way that most churches would teach it, and then I'll make very, very clear when there's something that I think is important that I disagree with. But I'll always give you what the normal interpretation is, an average Christianity world, and then I'll tell you what mine is, and then I'll try to justify it. But I don't necessarily disagree with what Ghost is saying. I've said it 100 times, I don't take Genesis literally. I don't think it was a literal account of exactly how this all happened, because it makes no sense. It's absolutely nonsensical. It's very hard to make click and to make things congruently fit together, it seems much more like storytelling. It seems much more like the author trying to get you to understand things that are real, that are super important, but at the time trying to get the audience of the time to understand the concepts through storytelling, which is what they did. It's what they did. And if you go through any other of the literature in even the rough time period, it's all very, very similar. It's all so similar. And they're trying to teach you principles. They're trying to teach you ideas and concepts. And they're using storytelling to do so. I also agree, though, that I think the flood is one of the parts that is literal. I think there was a flood. I think there's a lot of evidence around that, in my opinion. But a lot of the rest of it, that gets tougher, for sure. I totally agree. Maybe or perhaps it is the origin from which these metaphors came, said Rodriguez. That could be true, Ghost replied. I somewhat doubt that, though, because earlier Mesopotamian writings used these symbols too, but you're right, all metaphors have an origin somewhere. Yeah, we've talked about it before, for sure, but I think a lot of the parallels in the creation stories, and then looking at the datings of them, however much you choose to trust the dating of these things, there's a lot of congruencies. There are also then a lot of things. I look at it like this, if there was a big flood today, and my family made it out, Rodriguez's family made it out, and Ghost's family made it out, everybody else died. The three families are nowhere near each other. We're on totally other ends of the world. I'm going to tell the story the way that I perceive the story. And if we're being honest, because there is no one there to keep you accountable, you're probably going to embellish some things. You're probably going to alter some things. Some would be on accident for sure, because that's just how storytelling works. And then some of it, you'd probably try to spice it up. You try to make it sound a little better, or try to prove certain points a bit more, or press a certain topic a bit more. Rodriguez would do the same thing, and Ghost would do the same thing. And what would happen is that over time, through what is the future, in our perspective now being this current flood, that would even get twisted more. And so eventually it would get to a place where, like, my story isn't even really being told, but the basic understanding of it will. And same with Ghost, and same with Rodriguez. It's just, it's the most likely scenario. And if you really dig into the other creation stories, you'll see how congruent they really are. And it doesn't mean the principles are not real. It doesn't mean the fundamental or essential things that are being taught are not real. It just means that there was a story being told around it to get you to understand, to get you to remember. Was a huge reason they told stories the way they did, is because people will remember the stories this way. They won't remember a lot of the other stuff. Jesus did the same thing quite a bit, actually. If you think about it, Jesus did it a lot. And guess what? You remember them. You remember the stories that Jesus told, because he made them, he organized them that way for a reason. You remember the story, and you remember the principle that he's trying to teach you. I don't think you'd remember the principle as well if you didn't first remember the story. There's a reason that it happens that way. And Ghost and I made it out alive. Joe would have to edit the story to make us not look bad. All right. So they're going out, they're repopulating, blah, blah, blah. Went out by families from the ark. God's covenant with Noah, verse 20, chapter 8. Then Noah built an altar. Here we get into kind of the start of religiosity. Noah built an altar to the Lord and took some of every clean animal and some of every clean bird and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And when the Lord smelled the pleasing aroma, the Lord said in his heart, I will never again curse the ground because of man. This is again, obviously, anthropomorphism, where the attribute of human stuff to a non-human being, to a god, a deity. That is another example of it. But what is actually like literally being said is that Yahweh is what it would actually say. He was pleased. He found what was happening to be acceptable and pleasing to him. The same type of verbiage, the same type of terminology is used in later in the context of Mosaic law. So it's used later in Leviticus a lot. And I believe it's used elsewhere too, but I remember Leviticus very specifically because it's used a lot around the concept of Mosaic law. But the Lord took in this aroma and it was pleasing to him. The offering was acceptable. He accepted the offering. Then we get this first kind of cut at, I will never again curse the ground because of man. This gets really interesting. And this is another one that there is endless literature that you can read about what all this means kind of behind the curtain. And it gets very tenuous when you get to a certain point. But God is making the conscious choice through the author in a verbal sense because you have the quotes there. This is God speaking, where God is deciding that he will not deliberately do this to man again. And he's kind of talking to himself. He's having like an internal monologue, basically, about how he's not going to put the earth through this again because of man, because of the evilness of man. For the intention of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I ever again strike down every living creature as I have done. While the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease. Chapter 9. And God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Noah's sons, there are 3, remember. Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. This is now the directive. He's already insinuated it. The author's already insinuated that this is their next greatest job, is to repopulate the earth. Now you have a quote directive from God. Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. The fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth and upon every bird of the heaven, upon everything that creeps on the ground and all the fish of the sea. Into your hand they are delivered. This gets kind of interesting too, because this feeds further into this concept of hierarchy in nature. We talked about it early in Genesis. But there is this inherent and decided hierarchy in nature. It's depicted between the man and the woman. It's then depicted between the people collectively and the animal kingdom. Remember too, because we're going to get into it in a minute, is that not only is there hierarchy, but earlier in Genesis, we kind of got a direct understanding of what the relationship between people and animals were. And there's kind of an indication that people were not going to eat animals in the beginning. If you go back to chapter 1, 28 and 29, it says, and God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the heavens and over every living thing that moves on the earth. And God said, behold, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is on the face of the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food. So there's been an argument forever about, and just to be clear, I'm a big meat eater. Sorry, vegans, vegetarians. But there's a big argument about whether, because of this one verse, where people never intended to eat animals. I think it's a weak argument because we're given clear direction that we have dominion over them. So if not to use them as sustenance, what else is there? There's obvious things like we use them for work, like oxen were used for work, dogs were used for farming. There were a lot of things like that. But people will point to the fact that God does not really say anything directly about people eating animals yet. But he does say things about them eating plants. The reason this is important now is because it becomes wildly important later. When we get into animal sacrifice, which I've kind of been like intermittently touching on as we go, because it's something that needs to be like stuck in your head as you get prepped and primed for that section of the Old Testament. It began way back here. It started to happen way back here. Ghost and I kind of had a little back and forth a couple weeks ago about the concept of blood. Is that there seems to be a very particular way that the authors in the Bible choose to express and use blood in the things that they author. There's going to be another one right here. It's important. It's not super clear why it's important anywhere in the Bible, but it is very clear that it is important. There is something important about blood. That's wildly clear. The specifics of it are less clear, but it is something that you need to think about. So we get another introduction to this whole, not introduction, but we get a follow-up of the dominion over animals. In a sense, it's the prelude to animal sacrifice is all of this. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. So this is where we get the indication of meat eating. And as I gave you the green plants, I gave you everything. So God first talked about us eating the plants. Now he's talking about us killing and eating animals. However, he then says, but you shall not eat flesh with its life. That is its blood. Which then brings the argument of if you have a rare steak, are you breaking this command? Argument to be had. But first, in chapter 1, eat plants. Now, in chapter 9, eat animals. But with the caveat of not its blood. Do not eat its blood. Because before the animal can be consumed, it has to be properly prepped. It has to be adequately prepped, which is the draining of the blood. This is a clear indication that people had a specific way and directive of how to eat other living things, being animals. And that there is a very obvious issue with the blood. This is not strictly to the Bible. Also, to be clear, this shows up in other religions' literature as well. There is something about the blood. And from what I understand personally, and I'm not a professional, so do your own research, I believe it's very similar, where there's very little in the earlier literature. You can definitely find people talking about it now and telling you, basically making commentary on it, but I could do that, so don't trust that. In the earlier literature, there's not a lot of explanation as to specifically why. What is it about the blood? What is so important or off-putting or whatever it is about the blood? But the fact that there is some kind of issue with the concept of blood in this context, that shows up in some of the other ones too. Why would God allow the Old Testament to prophecy for him if it wasn't the literal inspired word of God? I don't think anybody said it wasn't the inspired word of God. And I mean, there are other sections in the Bible that are absolutely not literal, and I don't know of any scholarship that says they're literal. Like if you read through like some of the poetic work, like you have to, I guess, I don't know what you know, so I'm not going to try to like, I don't want to sound like I'm talking down to anybody, but the first thing to like really understand is the types of genres in the Bible. They're not all historical. So do we take those as literal? They were never meant to be literal. The way that they were stanza, the way that they were written in Hebrew, they were written as poetry. Poetry is not history. Poetry is not literal. And if you read through some of those, you'll see like clearly it was never meant to be taken literally. It was, some of them are just musings. Some of them are teaching concepts. Some of it is imagery. It was never meant to be literal. Our understanding isn't broad enough, but that doesn't mean there are fallacies. I'm not even saying there's a fallacy. I'm saying that there are many parts of the Bible that were never meant to be historical documents. They weren't meant to completely follow the history, moment to moment, step to step, with accuracy of actual events. Plenty of the Bible, it just wasn't written that way. And I'm not aware of any scholarship that disagrees with that. There is disagreement for sure about Genesis. So, to be fair, there's absolute disagreement about Genesis. But there are strong There are strong arguments on both sides. Again, to be fair, there are definitely strong arguments on both sides. Genesis is one of the ones that I spent years going through because it caused a problem for me personally in the way that I understood and interpreted the Bible. So I spent a very, very, very long time going through Genesis. And for a long time, I took it literal. I believed it was absolutely literal. And then the more I got to understand the actual Bible, how it was written, why it was written, the way that it was written, uncovered some of the issues with things and some of the reasons that authors did certain things and the reasons that the other church decided to convey things and what they started to get people to believe that weren't necessarily true, which is just normal. It's what people do. The more I paired that with the depth that I was learning about Genesis itself, I don't think it was ever meant to be taken literally. For a slew of reasons that we could definitely talk for hours about. But I don't believe that was ever the intention. I also don't care if you do, though. I don't care at all if somebody takes Genesis literally. I'm reading it for us as if it were literal. I have been the whole time, and I'm going to continue doing that. I'll then give like some of my personal opinion, just like you guys will give your personal opinion in the chat. I love that. And I'll never try to push anybody to believing what I believe because I do not care what you believe. I could not possibly care less. I want you to just believe what you believe because you've really, really looked into it and you believe it is the actual truth. What that truth is, I don't care. I don't care. Many people I have a lot of respect for take Genesis absolutely literally, and I'm totally fine with that. I don't agree it's either literal or metaphorical, never exaggerated, self-aggrandized, or misguided. I didn't say any of those things. I gave an example of if we went through a flood, we might exaggerate things. That's absolutely true. But I also would not put it past authors here. There are plenty of examples where it seems things were exaggerated in the Bible. And again, I don't care if you disagree with that. Feel free. I'm not here to make you believe what I believe. I would hope you are not here to make me believe what you believe either. We are both functioning adults. Do your research, get where you get. If you disagree with me, we can definitely have a conversation or a debate or whatever. Like you're free to land where you land. I think there are many indications of exaggeration in the Bible. Plenty, personally. David and Goliath. I don't think that's literal. I just don't. There's no it doesn't serve a purpose. It makes a great story though. It makes a great story. I'm sure the guy was huge and I'm sure David was small. I don't believe the literal numbers they gave were literal. At the same time, who cares? Does it change anything about anything that matters? No, it does not. And people who argue about those things, I have a hard time with them. Because that is the reason the church is so divided. Because I think something is an exaggeration that is absolutely 100% non-essential. And I'm not saying this is you. But then if somebody comes to me and is like, oh, you're totally stupid. You're wrong. It's literal. We have to take it literal. Otherwise, we should break up the church. That is the reason the church is so messed up. It doesn't matter if the numbers for the sizes of the humans in the story of David and Goliath are literal or not. It makes no difference for anything at all. So that's a pride thing. And again, I'm not talking about you. But people who think like that have pride issues. Now, if I came out and said, okay, well, to achieve salvation as a Christian, you have to be baptized in a lake that's fresh water and blah, blah, blah. And then you came to me and you're like, no, you're wrong. You're lying. That's not true. We have no reason to believe that. And you said, okay, well, I think we should split the church. I would understand why you'd split the church over that. Because that is an essential understanding. We have to have agreement about things like that matter. Otherwise, the religion will fall apart. But if I just don't believe David and Goliath were the sizes of humans the Bible says they are, it doesn't matter at all. And if somebody has a problem with that, then they have a pride issue. It's not an actual exegetical issue. These are my opinions, and now I'm going to shut up and I'm going to read again. Oh, actually, let me respond to you first. My first comment, we are reading Genesis, right? I understand completely that there are different contexts to each passage, let alone each book. The Gospels, I believe, are the only completely literal books. I guess we then will get into an argument about what does literal mean in the context of ancient literature. What does literal mean? And I'm just going to leave it at that because I don't like want this to turn into me arguing something because I don't care to argue it. I believe all of us sitting here right now agree about everything that actually makes a difference and everything that actually matters. I think all of us here probably disagree about non-essential things, and everybody has to be okay with that. Otherwise, you are not with the right people. And again, Elle, I'm not talking to you at all. But if somebody were here and they were getting super frustrated that we all disagreed about things that don't matter at all, it's not the right group for that person. But my point is that even if it's metaphorical or parabolic, doesn't mean that the literal stuff doesn't fall under the purview of God. I totally agree. I don't believe I said anything that would negate that. You definitely could have put Noah, Jonah, and David in scenarios. Yeah, I don't agree. I don't disagree with that at all. Centuries ago, churches were divided over bringing musical instruments in the church. Absolutely true. Ghost said, I think it's definitely possible for God to put people in scenarios, but it's also important to think about how. 100%. Elle said, God can do whatever he wants to prove his point. We don't respect his authority. That's why we don't believe that Goliath was a giant. I believe he was a giant. Again, so if that was directed at me, I would hope that you'd listen a little better, not put words in my mouth. If I misunderstood that, then I apologize. Goliath was large. I said that. Roll the tape back. Roll it back. I believe he was a very large individual. I believe David was probably a small guy. It doesn't mean the story that was told is exactly what happened. It's just the statistical likelihood of everything in the Bible being perfectly written, as that when we know many of the stories in the Bible were written quite a while after the stuff happened, and we have pretty good indication. A lot of it was written by not the person that we thought it was, but by a mentee of that person or somebody close to that person. And regardless, even if it was written by that actual person, it wasn't written in real time. And we know, because we are humans, that people's memories are not 100% literally perfect. That's just not reality. Which is then when we get into the whole concept of like, well, God wrote it through people. Fine. Then why are there mistakes? Because there are. It's just, the more like we defend these things that are blatantly true, like that the Bible has mistakes, it doesn't mean it's not inspired. It doesn't mean it's not divinely inspired by God. It means it was divinely inspired by God, written by an individual who is a human, who is a person with emotions and a personality. We know this from Paul. The dude lost his temper all the time. The dude went off on rants. He was a human. If God inspired that, Paul wouldn't have written all his epistles the way he wrote it. If God made him literally write exactly what God wanted him to write, exactly, with no intervention from Paul's emotions or humanity, the epistles would not look the way they look. They wouldn't have these emotional outbursts from Paul where he can no longer keep his cool. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. I personally believe there is humanity in the Bible. I also believe it's absolutely inspired. Otherwise, I would not waste my entire life reading it. The sheer hours that I read this text, I would not do that if I didn't think it was inspired. If I didn't believe it was absolutely important. Inspiration does not mean perfection. Ghost said that. Yeah, it just doesn't. I could be divinely inspired to produce some kind of work. It doesn't mean that I'm a puppet on puppet strings and God is pulling my fingers to write the letters on the page. That would remove free will. That would remove my humanity. And I don't believe God is a Machiavellian control freak. And if he is, not interested. You'd see me throw my Bibles out in an instant. I want nothing to do with that. I believe God allows humanity to come through. But it's inspired. Okay, now rant over. Rant over. And Elle, I hope all of that came across good faith. Because I really enjoy having you around. And I didn't take anything personal, so I hope you didn't take anything personal. These are the things like we have to be able to disagree about. That's the whole reason that we're here. I fundamentally do not agree, but I enjoy your perspective. And that's fine. That's fine. Ghost and I disagree on all kinds of things. Rodriguez and I disagree on all kinds of things. I don't think there's anybody here who agrees with me on everything. And there's definitely nobody here that I agree with on everything. As long as we agree on the fundamentals, and as long as when you have an idea that's in opposition to somebody else, propose it like you did. And I think that was fair, and I think it was a good kind of back and forth. It's interesting stuff, because then whoever else is here is listening, and they're some people are probably like, I totally disagree with Joe, and I agree with everything Elle is saying right now, and they're totally in your camp. And I love that that's the reality. That's the way it should be. We should be able to just truly explain and express where we disagree, and then continue on until I say something that absolutely conflicts with an essential doctrine in Christianity. We're all in good company. Once I do that, run away. Run away. All right. We'll get to see our right-wrong ratio during the Millennium Life Review. Right. I just know for a fact, from what I understand about God, this is not the type of stuff he cares about. And if it is, it's not the God that I'm aware of. So again, if that's the God, the Machiavellian control freak, I want nothing to do with him. I like to picture God being wherever God bees, looking down and being like, these people are at least sitting here, arguing about the Bible, like something that matters, something that is important, something that I, as God, spend a lot of time doing. I like to think that like he enjoys that. Whereas the majority of the world is off watching Netflix or doing something absolutely worthless. At least we're here trying. At least we're here being like, I disagree with you, and this is why. And at least we're not like the church, where the minute Elle disagrees with me, he's like, you're a heretic. I'm going to go tell everybody that you're a heretic. I'm going to split this church apart. I'm going to take some of your people with me, and I'm going to go start a new church where we say that Goliath was 35,000 feet tall, and Joe's really stupid because he doesn't agree with that. Yes, Joe, I kind of a little bit agree with Elle. See? Great example. And I think Elle has great input. I agree with a handful of the things he said. He and I don't see he or she, I don't remember. I'm sorry. The usernames kill me. But Elle and I don't fully agree on the literal nature of things, which is fine. If we got to the New Testament and I said, none of it is literal, it's all stories, it's all just trying to get you to understand principles and concepts, then I would understand if Elle was like, okay, I no longer want anything to do with this. I'm going to go find somewhere else to be. But I think we all agree on the New Testament and on a lot of the Old Testament. Elle is a lady. Okay, sorry. I have a hard time keeping people straight that haven't been around for a long time. I apologize. It's the only thing that matters. We are seeking him genuinely. I could not agree more. And with good faith. That's the important part. The fact that we can sit here and do it and be like, cool, agree to disagree. Awesome, please continue. That's the important part to me. Because that's what the church is not doing. You just leave the church and you go bounce somewhere else. Inspiration is not perfect, because if it were perfect, we would not be free. Agreed. That's where I am too. We would be forced to accept the law of gravity. That's a good example. Yeah. Even though people argue about gravity. I agree. It's a beautiful thing. Always, always, always call me out and explain why you're calling me out. I'm beyond okay with it. I very much like it. All right, I don't remember. Yeah, I gave you everything. That's where we were. So Genesis 9, verse 3. Every moving thing that shall be food for you, every living thing that lives shall be food for you. And as I gave you the green plants, I give you everything. But you shall not eat the flesh with its life, that is, its blood. So we talked about the blood. The blood is important. We're going to get into the blood later. But before the actual food could be consumed, it would need to be drained of blood. This is kind of giving you the pretext that there is a prohibition on the blood. We know also from other, and I think I mentioned this, but from other religious texts that date roughly the same time, they also had issues with blood. Animal blood had to be pulled before the food was good for eating. So it's not just to Jewish culture, because remember, we're not Christians right now, we're Jewish, because Christians don't exist. So it's not just Jewish, it's also in other literature from other religions. Once we get into, again, Leviticus, this all becomes extremely important, because then blood becomes a really big deal. It becomes something absolutely essential to understanding like the Jewish faith in general. Leviticus 17:11 says, "For the life of the flesh is in the blood. The life of the flesh is in the blood," which is what is being said here. "And I have given it to you on the altar to make atonement for your souls, for it is the blood that makes atonement by the life." This is where we get the full context and understanding of what was actually functionally happening prior to Jesus in the New Testament. I feel like Christians don't think about this. Life was not for Jews like it was for Christians. It was dramatically different in every possible way. It was dramatically different. One of those things was sacrificial offerings, which, like it just talked about, is reiteration of here in Genesis. The life is in the blood. The life is what is required. The life being the blood is what is required by God to make atonement by the life. Super important. Very, very important. And we'll talk a lot about it in Leviticus. But you get it already now, where it starts to become ingrained in you as a reader and a follower. "And for your lifeblood, I will require a reckoning." So, actually, I will require a reckoning from every beast. I will require it from man. From his fellow man, I will require a reckoning for the life of man. So context is showing that we're talking about human life now, not the actual liquid blood. Whether a human life is taken, regardless of who takes the human life, there will be a consequence, is what he's saying. So whether it's taken by an animal or whether it's taken by another person, there will be a penalty for this. There will be an issue. You will face a consequence. It makes it completely clear. Then he goes on, "Each man to his brother, or man will require a reckoning from his fellow. From his fellow man, I will require a reckoning." This is making clear the retribution of person to person. So humans that are valuable will be one for one, is what's being expressed. Go over here misgendering the... I'm so sorry. I misgendered the dove earlier too, though, so it's not just you. The dove was a girl and I called her a boy. So at least you're not alone. No, I'll get used to you. You don't have to change your handle. I'll get used to it. Just give me a little bit of time. Give me a little bit of time. Don't change anything on my account. I will not misgender you or the dove ever again. I got both you ladies down. We're good. Verse 6. "Whoever sheds the blood of a man, by man shall his blood be shed, one for one. For God made man in his own image." This is actually really, really powerful, and it needs to be fully understood. Why would there not be a penalty for a man? And when we say man, we mean people. It's not just males. So why would there not be a penalty for a person taking a person's life? If we believe that the person bears the image of God, meaning the person, in a sense, has God in them, and when you take the life, you're cutting down that aspect of God, that specific piece of God, I guess, in a sense. When you do that, why would there not be retribution? This is the beginning of where we get like the first conceptual understanding of the idea of a life for a life. If you kill, you will be killed. We've talked about capital punishment on Thursdays, and I feel like within the past month or two, we talked about it again. We've had kind of this debate, an argument about whether it's right, whether it's wrong, whatever. Old Testament, super clear. New Testament, less clear. But Old Testament is wildly clear. If you kill, you get killed. Period. It's very, very simple. So if there was a crime committed, that person would then have their life taken. Don't do, otherwise you will get it. In my opinion, it's a very simple concept. It's a very easy to follow concept. Not everybody agrees, and that's fine. 7, "And you be fruitful and multiply, increase greatly on the earth and multiply in it." We've already talked about this. He's reiterating the directive. "Then God said to Noah and to his sons with him, behold, I establish my covenant with you and your offspring after you, and with every living creature that is with you, the birds, the livestock, and every beast of the earth with you, as many as came out of the ark. It is for every beast of the earth. This covenant is super important because it is in a sense, it is the original contract. It is the first contract of this type. When God makes a promise to humanity. So a covenant, it can either be a two-way contract, but it can also be a one-way contract. God made covenants with people without the people necessarily signing the contract as well. But we also have a covenant, like we see later in the Bible, where both parties sign the contract. This is a contract from God to us. It's his covenant, which just means promise. It's the best way to describe it, would be promise. It's his promise to humanity. It's not to Noah necessarily. It's to that which Noah will bring forth, which would be humanity. So this is my first covenant to you my covenant with you and your offspring after you and all the animals, yada, yada, yada. 11, I established my covenant with you that never again, he's reiterating now, never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of the flood, and never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth. This is interesting because he's said it 3 times now. So all the numerology people are losing their minds. 3 times now. He said it a handful of verses ago, and then now he's saying it twice here. The promise is that God will never make the earth flood again, specifically. God then reiterates it. There could be an argument about whether God would do something else, about whether perhaps this is a slight loophole. But it's a fair interpretation to also say that God is saying he will never wipe out humanity in general. Again, I think that's also a very fair interpretation. And that's one that, like, in terms of salvation, does it matter? Not really. But in terms of interpretation, does it matter? Kind of. It kind of does. I'll grant that one. It kind of matters. Because on one hand, if it was, I'll just never flood the earth again, like, we still kind of have a bit to be worried about. But on the other hand, if the interpretation is, I will never again wipe out all of humanity, that's much more comforting. I'd feel much better about that. I'd feel much calmer if that was the actual truth. So interpretation kind of matters, but not in the sense of essential doctrine. In the sense of essential doctrine, it matters 0. It makes no difference. 12, and God said, this is the sign of the covenant that I made between me and you and every living creature that is with you for all future generations. I have set my bow in the cloud. What is the bow? What is the bow in the cloud? And it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. So there it is. There you see the one-sided contract, the covenant between me and the earth. He's reiterating it over and over again. The dove was named Sophia. I used to be Lilith. I changed it. I took out the. I might change it again. I'll never flood the earth again with water. Right. That's how I read it. I'm like, dang, God, you sly. I see what you did there. I see what you did there. That's not to say I won't rain fire down on you, you know? The piano jazz music was always there. I don't have it playing for me because it drives me insane. But everybody else has told me they like it. So it plays in the background. The type of music cycles though. So it may have been something less jazzy previously. Okay. So, all right, now we're going to get into the disgusting parts, is the best word for it. But first, what is the bow in the cloud? What is the bow? People right now are trying to take the bow back. They're trying to take the bow back. Well, thanks, Joe. It is the rainbow, right? So the Hebrew word there is most, and this is the interesting thing, is it's a war word, kind of like ecclesia. where ecclesia it was a straight war word. It was people gathering together to go commit violence. To be fair, it's people gathering together for a specific purpose, is what it is. But the context that was actually used for the word ecclesia before the church was war. Ironically, the word here for bow is not necessarily a rainbow. It was an archer's bow. However, in context, what would make more sense, arguable, would be a rainbow. But you could absolutely interpret this still from a military context, from a wartime context. It doesn't say rainbow. This is one of those ones that, like, you need to hear me. This is not my opinion. Go look it up yourself. Go do the research. It never said rainbow. In the original text in Hebrew, it is not rainbow. It is bow. So there is a large portion of the Jewish community that never saw this as a rainbow. They saw this as a literal bow, an archer's bow. And we know this because there is literature talking about it being a war bow in the sky. Other side of that would be that it is a rainbow and that the author is depicting it, or trying to, in kind of a wartime context, or a military, with military connotation. Either way, again, doesn't matter. But if it interests you, go look into it and see where you land. Shall be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth when I bring clouds over the earth and the bow is seen in the clouds. Rainbow, archer's bow. I will remember my covenant that is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. Did God remember? Does God forget? And then when he sees the rainbow, he remembers. No anthropomorphism. And the waters shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh. There's that specificity again. Never again will I flood you. Wink, wink. When the bow is in the clouds, I will see it and remember anthropomorphism, the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature. Of all flesh that is on the earth, God said to Noah, this is the sign of the covenant that I have established between me and all flesh that is on earth. All right, this is the really rough part, but I have to kind of jam through this quick. Okay, so if we need to talk about it further, maybe we can start next Sunday with this. We can just put it in Discord and I'll save it. But Noah's descendants, the son of Noah who went forth from the ark, were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham was the father of Canaan. These three were the sons of Noah, and from these, the people of the earth were dispersed. This is very difficult, what we're about to read, and I'm going to assume there will be a lot of argument about this, and that is fine. Noah began to be a man of the soil. This is a callback to Adam, who was a man of the soil. He planted a vineyard. He drank of the wine and became drunk. This is the first indication of drunkenness in the Bible. Welcome. And lay uncovered in his tent. For all you modest people out there, that means he was butt naked. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his two brothers outside. We're going to finish and then we'll come back to this. Then Shem and Japheth took a garment, laid it on both their shoulders, and walked backwards to cover the nakedness of their father. Their faces were turned backwards, and they did not see their father's nakedness. When Noah woke up from his wine and knew what his youngest son had done to him, he said, "Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be to his brothers." If you just read this and you're not confused, you're not paying attention. It's insanely confusing. So here we go. I don't even know how to begin. There are basically two schools of thought for what is going on. We have an issue, two schools of thought issue with the incident between Ham, and Noah. So you have to understand you have to get a sense of what the actual offense was. why is Canaan being cursed? He wasn't a part of this. Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and then told his two brothers outside. So Ham told Japheth and Shem. Why is Canaan being cursed? That makes no sense. So in 22, it could be literally read as Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father, which is what it says. Another possible interpretation by idiom, is that it's not about Noah being naked, but it is about Noah being insulted, which contextually, as well as just other points in the Bible where idioms are used, this is another very viable interpretation. Meaning, Ham's offense could be that of voyeurism. It's either, if you don't know what voyeurism, it's like somebody who's peeping Tom, right? Somebody who like watches inappropriate things without that person knowing about it. You know, like binoculars in the window. So it's either that. There is also a thought process of Noah being castrated. Otherwise, there are two other ones that it does not please me to say them, but sodomy, as well as incestuous relations against her will of the mother. I hope all that came through. I stumbled quite a bit. But those are kind of the options. So one, you could take it exactly how it's written. However, read it again, because it doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense. And that doesn't mean it's not true. It just means we're missing something, which also wouldn't be surprising. Canaan could have been the... God, I hate YouTube always cuts off the comments. I can't see anything. Canaan could have been the son of Ham and his mother. It's a possible interpretation too, yeah. It's one of these sad ones where it's not clear enough. It's not clear enough. It's very possible that we're missing something. Something was left out, but it doesn't fully add up. But Canaan was cursed instead of Ham, and Ham was the person who saw Noah naked. But it would also make sense that Noah's nakedness wasn't actually nakedness, but it was some event that caused extreme insult to Noah, and the insult was his nakedness. The idioms in the Hebrew language were extremely common. So it's something that, like, agree or disagree, doesn't matter. It's something you have to think about. You don't get to not think about it. You have to, because it's a highly probable possibility. So it could have been explained like that. Again, does it really matter? No. But as a student of the Bible, yes. To some degree, it does matter. It does matter. But I can't answer it for you. It's tough. It's tough. So it could be either literal. It could be an idiom. It just, in my opinion, we just don't have enough. So you kind of just have to land where you land. And there's really not a whole lot more you can do about it. But cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be to his brothers. That is the curse. He also said, blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant. May God enlarge Japheth, and let him dwell in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant. After the flood, Noah lived 350 years. All the days of Noah were 950, and then he died. So Noah curses Canaan, not Ham. Noah does this because of one of the possible interpretations there, but it's just tough to say. It's tough to say. Either way, it's one of these parts of the Bible nobody ever talks about, the possible incestuous issue between Ham and his mother, which left Noah in nakedness of either shame or insult, or castration, or sodomy, or voyeurism, no matter which way you shake this, and by means of interpretation, either way, it's terrible. Either way, it's no good. It's not a good thing. Nobody leaves this interpretation argument happy, I guess is the point. Yes, it's shame, disrespect, and dishonoring an elder. Yeah. I mean, yeah. No matter which way you bend it, that those things are generally true. Yes. Heiser thinks the nakedness could be referring to Noah's wife, the boy's mother. Yeah, I think that's a really good interpretation. I think the nakedness could possibly be a direct reference to her, but I also find it very viable that the nakedness is in reference to Noah, because that's more or less what it says, but because of something that happened to the boy's mother, by the boy, by him. Either way, it sucks. Either way, it's a total bummer, you know. I personally think it's referring to the Aurora. Archer's bow is a weapon, and I think the EM field is also a weapon and also armor. That's interesting. I've never thought about it like that. See, this is why it's good. I don't agree with Ghost, but it's an interesting way to look at it. It's definitely an interesting theory. Yeah, it's something to think about. Whoa, Joe looks like some kind of LA theist gang leader. Just look, just joking. It's hot, bro. It's hot. I know I'm looking very unprofessional. I apologize. I apologize. I'll get it together for Thursday. Don't worry. I'll have a tie on again. All will be well. I won't look like a gang leader. Yeah, the old ways coming out. Coming back. All right. I gotta roll. So if TikTok, go to YouTube. There's been a few of you there. Go to YouTube because it's better. It's better there. Whether you're on TikTok or YouTube, though, we have a Discord server. This is said Discord server. There's a link pinned in the live chat. There's also a link in the description of the video. There's not a lot to say. It's a bunch of great people. There's people way smarter than me that can definitely get into things much deeper than me. I am just the vessel that brings the smart people together. So if you're into the type of things we talk about, then it's a great place to be. So definitely check it out. It's free. It'll always be free. It'll never be a thing where you are forced to pay money or do anything stupid. So get with that. And then Thursday, just reminder, we are not starting Adam and Eve yet. We still have a little bit left in 2 Corinthians. Yeah, Adam and Eve won 71%. So once once 2 Corinthians is done, which I want to say is 2 weeks out, then we will start Adam and Eve on Thursday. So at that point, it'll be Thursday, Adam and Eve, Sunday, Genesis. And we'll bounce until one of them is finished, and then we'll, continue on. Yeah, I'm pretty excited for Adam and Eve. I think it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting. I like it a lot because there's just not a lot of good commentary on any of this stuff. So you're forced to really try to get into the text. It makes it much better. LA Theist Gang, Scott. It's hot in here. Yeah. Wife beater, life beater. This isn't a wife beater. It's a tank top, bro. It has a pocket. Get out of here. I have a pocket protector in my tank top. I don't own wife beaters. I can at least say that. Wife beater, life beater. Jesus, God help me. A gang is just a cooler. I feel like a gang is a lamer cult. I feel like cults are at least organized. The gangs are probably better with money, though. You got to give them that. They're probably better. Well, no, actually, cults are pretty good at swindling people out of money. I don't know. That'd be a good competition, though, like a reality TV show. Gangs versus cults. See who would do better. Kind of like Shark Tank. You get a guy who's got to build a cult from the ground up or a gang from the ground up. Who gets the most land? Who gets the most money? Life beater. That's so terrible. Where and how do we read along with Adam and Eve 1 and 2? You can find it online in PDFs. Let me see if I can find you guys one that's easily, I guess I would assume most you're on your phone, which makes it hard. Let me look. Let me see if I can find any good apps that have it that are, optimized for smartphone. I'm obviously on a computer and I do most of the study stuff on a computer, which is easier because PDFs are much more PC friendly than they are cell phone friendly. So let me see what I can do about finding you guys a good copy for a phone. And then I'll post that to Discord. Let me do a little bit of digging around. See what we can get. I own tons of wife beaters. For some reason, that doesn't totally shock me. You just seem like, and not, I know that's going to be taken wrong. I just mean you seem the type to wear that type of shirt. One, you're in Vegas and you're always complaining about being hot, so it just makes sense. But two, I feel like it just fits for some reason. And not because of wife beating activities, but just the style, I suppose. Gangs vs. cults would win by a slim margin. I probably agree. Joe, you gotta have them snakes for the Adam and Eve lecture. I'll have Kat bring one of the snakes out. Or two of them. Or three. Or four. Or five. Because there are five now. Right? Four. No, five. No, four. I don't know. I don't know. There's a bunch of snakes in the house. I don't know how many there are. How many are there? 5. There's 5 snakes. Some Bloods versus Branch. Davidians. Go. I think it'd be a great show, y'all. Along with my Nike Cortez. Rodriguez looking like a Sureño. Is this it? What do you mean, is this it? So the first book, Project Gutenberg, looks like they have the first book. I'll collect you guys a handful. Joe, tell us who went to prison without telling you. Oh, come on. Don't put that on me on the live television. Come on now. I think everybody knows my past situation. I dress like Steve Jobs 90% of the time. I mean, be fair to me. I wear a shirt and tie most days. But it's Sunday and it's hot. So I am in the wifey life beater. I will find you guys a handful before TikTok. Have a good night. I'm shutting you off. Go to YouTube. Bye. I will find you guys a handful of options for the Adam and Eve. Yeah, I was gonna say, Scott, it's not short, bro. It's freaking long. It's very long. I'll find you guys a bunch. There's a lot of places you can read it. A lot. The quality just differs, and like how it looks on a mobile phone totally differs. So it's just hard. But I'll find a handful, and then I'll test them all on my phone and see whatever the best one is, and then I'll give you guys that one so that everybody can kind of be on the same page, literally, and also non-literally. Mikhail, you got a tropical blouse and chanclas? I don't know that word. I'm looking forward to the Adam and Eve Bible study Thursday. Yes, not Thursday yet. No. We have a little bit left in 2 Corinthians, and then Thursday. I'll be able to tell you right now. Hold on, y'all. Hold on. And then I gotta go. Thursday will be 2 Corinthians. But I want to say we have like 3 chapters left or something like that. We did 8 and 9. So we have 10, 11, 12, and 13. So we'll try to do 10 and 11 Thursday, 12 and 13 next Thursday, and then the week after that we'll start Adam and Eve. That's the plan. So not this Thursday, not next Thursday, but the following Thursday. From the Forgotten Books of Eden, from 1926. Ice Cold Modella Negra. Rodriguez and McKellar are very cute. All right. All right. All right. I think we're good. I'll find a copy that is really good for everybody to use for Adam and Eve. And then if you want to use your own, whatever. But I'll at least try to provide kind of a default good resource for it, just to make it easier. Everybody have a lovely night. I love you guys. This was fun. Elle, thank you for being a good sport, and thank you for calling me out when you don't agree with me. I very much like that. And that is my favorite thing about what we do, is that nobody's afraid to do that. And I greatly respect that. And I hope that you keep doing it. Genuinely, I hope that you keep doing it. It's really nice to have you here.